Good morning, everybody. My name is Phil Ike, and I'm here in downtown Lansing for another episode of the Michigan Main Street Story Series. I'm in Middle Village, by my two friends, Kathleen and Bob. I could introduce you guys, but people listen to me talk all the time, so I'll have you go one by one. Kathleen, ladies first. Give us your name, your position here, what you do here in downtown Lansing.
Okay. Kathleen Edgerly. I serve as the Executive Director of Downtown Lansing, Inc. I've been in downtown life for 12 plus years. So
A veteran,
yes.
Oh, I love it. Bob,
gosh.
Bob, why are you here?
So many people ask that question. Hey, dude, what are you here
Bob
for?
and I were joking before, so people at home were like wondering why that tone was there.
I am Bob Rose. I'm the chair of the design committee, and I've been in Lansing for 30 plus years, worked at the city of Lansing for 26 years.
Wow.
So,
a long-time volunteer, I hear.
yeah, it's fascinating because I started out, the director of public service was on a pre-Main Street, what we has the principal shopping district, which turned into Downtown Lansing Inc. And then, I was here when the dinosaurs were roaming. And
Wow.
we had cleanup issues that were just unbelievable.
You were here at the very beginning.
He's giving us the throwback.
But there was people here before that too.
Yeah.
So, essentially we had this committee and we did a lot of things in the right of way, and I worked in the engineering department with the permits and such. And so I got involved that way, and it slowly evolved. And one day, Mindy Bildu said to me, "We're going to be a Main Street." And I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm. Not knowing hardly anything about, I didn't know anything. So,
Yeah.
So we get the status as a Main Street, and, she goes, "Oh, you can be the chair of the design committee." And I'm like, sure. Once again, my front voice is like volunteering like crazy, and the back voice is going, "Do you even know what you're doing?"
You don't even know what that is, Bob.
And you've been doing it ever since.
And yet you just keep dancing along to the music.
Why volunteer? Why spend all this time? I mean, doing things for free. Our culture right now is the hustle and the side gig, and how can you start your own business, and how can you get money for what you're doing? Why volunteer? Why spend your time doing this stuff?
Well, it's fascinating because I had to, Matt from our committees on, help me out with that.
Which, Matt? Promotions?
Promotions, yeah.
Okay.
And he had invited me over to LCC, Lansing Community College, to talk to their honor students. There was a few of us there. And we were talking about what we did, and specifically with Downtown Lansing Inc. And it was interesting because I explained to these kids that, and this is what I came to, I evolved into this by basically not knowing and standing outside the realm of what happened in my community and going, why isn't somebody doing something? To being involved in my community by volunteering, and then realizing through this whole process that I have, in telling these kids at LCC, these honor students, you have an opportunity to speak your mind, make your community how you see it should be, have an influence. It's obvious that there's a lot of people involved in your community, but you actually have input into it. It's like the public art we've done here, and the beautification of downtown, and these things don't happen magically at night. They actually happen with hard work from volunteers, and not just people on the committee, but people who will come and do our cleanups and do our other activities. And over the years, it's evolved and gotten bigger and bigger. And we communicate with like the Old Town, Main Street, and Rio Town. We work, back and forth. We try to keep the connectivity of our community together, knowing that together we're going to rise as a community. And also, we've had Charlotte come up here and talk to us, and we've had other communities. And it's the events we've had, like the placemaking conference we have through the Arts Council, we're involved in that too. So there's a great communication of what things happen in other communities. And the Main Street stuff is just fantastic because you hear what other people are doing. That just excites you for what you're doing. And then they ask you what you're doing, and that, and you explain it, and they're all like, wow, that's cool. We want to do it that way. And all that helps you as a person grow in your community. It's amazing that, leadership skills and other activities are developed because you get involved. And someone's not, one of the best ways to get leadership skills and have influence in your community is by volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing, your growth. And I would say that you look at most successful people in their life, they volunteer.
It's it kind of goes back to the adage: if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And in a really positive way, volunteerism is that. You want you want cleaner streets, grab a broom and go clean them.
And I got to add, it's interesting because everybody's got a great idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you sit with a bunch of other people and you flesh it out and you talk, and it becomes a very interesting. You rehone your. It's great to have that inner voice and just say, I know this is exactly how it should be, but not put it out where people go, hey, what about this and what about that? Which is wonderful to develop ideas. It's like I said, as in a profession, what you learn here, you carry with you into that. You learn how to work with people, how to share ideas, and how to take defeats. Because not your ideas aren't always the best. And that's all right.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. Kathleen, what about you? Have you always been in city work and downtown planning work, or what were you doing before Main Street?
Oh, goodness. The journey to Main Street has been unique, as I think really all journeys into Main Street and downtown life are. I actually graduated with a degree in advertising and PR and was expected that the only way you were going to get a job in that industry was to move to a big city, be part of a big agency. And for those that know me, I don't always follow that traditional path or do as I'm told. And I loved Lansing. I didn't want to have to leave this community that I'd been a part of, that my family had been part of for generations. And so I started looking for other career opportunities within that field that made me feel like we were making a positive impact, having a positive impact, making a difference, could utilize different skill sets, my love of working with people. And Main Street and downtown life found me. It was definitely not something I had planned on, but once I experienced it and found it and connected with it, I fell in love.
It's a beautiful pivot because especially having a background marketing, talking to a lot of folks in that space, you don't necessarily have that human element. You don't have that mission, purpose-based element. It's how we need to sell this thing. We need to sell this company. It doesn't matter if you morally agree with it or if you believe in it. Like, all your job is to sell this thing and make it look amazing to the rest of the world. And it sounds like you were driven by a different kind of purpose and people and community instead of just stuff.
Exactly. And I think that's where an area of Main Street brings the community side, the true community side, to community and economic development. And those of us who have the opportunity to lead and serve these organizations, we have the ability to bridge the governmental side, a developer side, with the small business owner side, and all of the residents and individuals who want to make a difference and they just don't necessarily know how or where to go or where they'd be the most useful and have the most impact. And so that's what I find is the most rewarding part of being a Main Street and downtown director.
When people think of Lansing, downtown Lansing, especially if you're in Michigan, you're thinking, it's our capital. I've been to the Capitol building. But a lot of folks in Michigan may not have gotten out of their cars and walked around downtown Lansing and seen it. And so kind of the impression of downtown Lansing is this kind of sprawling metropolis with large companies and big hotels and whatnot. And Kathleen, in our conversation before the interview, you threw out the word transformation, in that you kind of have to reimagine what Lansing will become. And so I want to ask you about that. What exactly are you talking about when you're talking about this reimagining of what Lansing is and what it should become?
Sure. Downtown Lansing is in a very different position today than many downtowns, especially main streets, as they are going through and talking about transformation or revitalization. We aren't going through this transition because we lost momentum or something of that nature, right?
Kind of that suburban sprawl pulling people from the city center,
We are going through a transition in many ways because COVID entered. And it changed how people engaged and interacted with downtown Lansing. It forced us for 60 plus years to stop being comfortable with a certain demographic or just relying on a daytime worker to infuse light and life into this downtown district from 8 to 5. And instead, stop talking and dwelling about what was, and let's start putting action to what we know we can be, what we deserve, and what this capital city should be, as we are Michigan's downtown, right? So we not only started talking about, okay, how are we going to plan this? We had to, one, provide hope to all those who are part of this community and facing devastating impacts of 85 to 90% of our daytime traffic and sales gone overnight.
Wow.
And losing our major employer to, right now we've provided the hope. We have to provide some stability, and we have to strategize for our future and put action to that strategy. And there have been so many wonderful people, businesses, developers, city officials who were willing to roll up their shirt sleeves and say, okay, let's harness and really grab onto this once-in-a-life opportunity that it is and chart our course forward and start moving in the same direction and say, how are we going to diversify our business mix? How are we going to address vacancies in this downtown district? How do we bring more residential down here? Because there's not one simple thing, and I'll probably change that answer later on in this interview, but there's a lot of different ways to build community and to build a stronger path forward, and that's what we're doing right now. It's exciting and exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Downtown Lansing is in an interesting position, a little bit different from a lot of our communities, but I think also, like you referred to COVID as being this critical event, this critical point in the transformation, when a lot of our communities have experienced those critical moments. A huge employer that once was the backbone of their economy leaves in the 1970s. And looking back on that, we may not have been around then, but we're living the effects of it now, trying to figure out, okay, how do we get ourselves out of it? But downtown Lansing seems like we're in the thick of that moment where we need to figure out who we are and what kind of downtown we need to be.
We have to believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Bob, this next question is for you, and then Kathleen, definitely jump in here. I'm curious, Bob, kind of from the people perspective of community building. From your perspective, how do you build a community focusing on people? I mean, a lot of times we think, how do we get jobs? How do we fill vacant buildings?
Right.
How do we do these like physical, concrete things?
Right.
But in your perspective and experience, how do you get people to buy in? How do you rally the troops? How do you form this downtown, this community into a team that can move forward together?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Excuse me. Working in City Hall and for over 27 years or so, you see that aspect of it, and living in Lansing, you see the neighborhood aspect of it. And I think I love Lansing. First of all, it's fantastic, and every community has similar challenges. Is you have neighborhoods that you want to make robust and happy, and places people want to live. And we have great neighborhood associations doing that. We have the downtown, which is, like Kathleen said, for a while it was like we had our bread and butter was the lunch crowd, and then we'd have special events.
The machine was running.
It was, I think what happened was, and it's not just us, it's other groups that came along and said, we'd like to use your downtown for something like a car capital thing or some other event. And we help facilitate those, and that's working with our community members. And it's not just people in Lansing, it's people outside Lansing that want to come up here and hold an event. There's 50, and I always do this in our community, there's 50 cities in the United States that have capitals. And we're one of them. We're an ambassador. First, one of our jobs, I think, as a community, we're the ambassador for the world, to represent Michigan, and in the world view, the state view, and somebody coming from, Marquette, Escanaba, Ironwood, coming down here to visit the Capitol. We want to make sure they see the best side in what we do here, and are entertained. There was some folks coming up from, I believe it was Atlanta, and I was sitting outside here a couple days ago, and they're looking for places to go and places to eat. And when you start showing them that, here's the market here, there's Old Town, which you always, and you get this a miracle on 34th Street. You go, try gimbals. You bring up your whole community. There are things that we may not have exactly down here, but there are things that go out there. But also talking to people about, because you get people who go, there's nothing to do here, and you explain to them there are things to do, and if you want other things that you want to do, and this is what I told the kids at LCC, is basically, if you want to see Billie Eilish here, well, why don't you get on a committee and get in whether it's us or somebody else, but that doesn't just come out of the sky. There are hardworking people and volunteers that make these things happen. I mean, there's all sorts of things, like Community Foundation, Artist Umbrella, 501, and
Convention Visitors Bureau.
Visitor Bureau, and it's that's one great thing about being involved in this, is that you start branching out and meeting these other people and you start seeing these same folks in different meetings and things, and it's like, wow, this is. You start listening to how successful people in these committees, in these groups, bring up the community, and I think we share that, and I think I reach out to people and say, you can do something.
Yeah.
You can have an influence.
And so it sounds like you need to be an advocate for yourselves. You have to get people involved. You have to inspire them to actually go out and take action, as opposed to just consume a community, become part of a community. Kathleen, anything to say to that?
I do. I'll amend my earlier statement about there's not one thing that really leads to the future success of a downtown or a neighborhood. But so many times, especially in the last year or so, I've been asked, what can we do for downtown Lansing? What will it take to help downtown Lansing? What are our next steps? And to put it simply, it takes you. It takes me, it takes all of us saying, I have passion and pride for this community. I want to continue to be part of its future. I'm going to invest my time, my talents, my funds in one way or another, and not just commit to building habits of lifting up local, but being more conscious of the people and places who make up your community and taking all the steps to ensure that they're going to be here for years to come. It takes that community to build a community, and we all have to lift each other up. And it even became one of our campaigns over the last 2 years of lifting up local and featuring the people and places who make up this community. So there's that personal connection, and then soon you see the spirit of community continue to grow, and people looking out for their neighbors or their fellow business owners and building off each other's enthusiasm and excitement of doing something new, or taking those simple steps that add up to a big impact, from putting the flower pot outside to holding an outdoor concert in front of your building, to saying, I'm going to put a patio out here, and hey neighbors, do you want to use the tables as well? All of those things help a transformation and add to that sense of place and that spirit of community.
I love the idea of, if you want to inspire your community, you have to look in at yourself, and you have to listen to your neighbor, and you have to know your neighbor, and you have to know their story, and you have to get engaged with them, and you have to do something for them, and they do something for you. Because a lot of times we look to say that I'm in a struggling community. Well, I need to do what Traverse City is doing, or why can't we be like Detroit? Look at what's happening. We look at all of these other places when whether we're in a community of 200 or 20,000 or 200,000, we are full of an infinite amount of inspiration simply by walking across the street.
And we have to be ourselves. We have to be Lansing so well that everybody else wants to be Lansing and talks about how can we do this more like Lansing, and also purchase with purpose. Think about how we're spending our dollars and spending our time.
You being yourself is such an important idea, because that's the game you can win. Nobody can be yourself better than you.
Exactly.
And so when we try to mimic and we try to copy and we try to position ourselves against, I keep saying Traverse City, but I'm a city saying, oh, we need to boost tourism. Let's try to be like Traverse City. Traverse City's been doing it for decades, man. Like, you're not going to catch up. How about you look at yourself and what is the unique value that our community can bring to the world? And that's the game you can win, because people want to be in places that are unique and individual, in a place that they can't experience anywhere else.
Exactly.
Well, and it's interesting because when you hear, like, you see a famous band or an actor or something, it's like, oh my gosh, overnight success. None of that is true. It is like a Traverse City or a Howell. That comes from, and I've watched it here for the many years I've been here. It's one group leaving it to another group, and you grow off of that. And the people who are doing it, like Kathleen, you're in the middle of it. It's when that one person walks into town and goes, wow, you guys have a great downtown. You know, it's like, that's when you're like, yes, that's why we're doing this. And as I explained to the people on my committee, it's like, you think of it as your house. You're opening your door. You're showing off this is our community. You're inviting people into your community as a house. This is our flower garden. These are our statues. This is our artwork. These are our outdoor cafes where we eat. That's, it's just volunteers. Again, you go back to that, and I think volunteering for these no matter if it's just for one day or 2 days, but next thing you know, you have ownership of what your community is. And in my little neighborhood, it's exactly that way. People are planting stuff in the right of way. They're doing. It's infectious. It becomes part of our lives and people around us. And I've watched business people. We've watched business people come out, and it rises up.
Causes the ripple effect,
It
for
does.
sure.
I mentioned this earlier, that I was in the middle of you two in Middle Village. And if folks listening to this have not been to downtown Lansing, they may not know what Middle Village is. Kathleen, what is this place we are in right now?
Well, and if you haven't been to downtown Lansing in over a year, it's time to rediscover, right? So Middle Village is a micro market retail center. And we've talked a lot, I think, without saying the words, about leading by example and that personal investment. And while our vacancies unfortunately increased due to hybrid models and remote working and things of that nature, we had an opportunity to either stay in our current office setting or make a change. And our board said, well, let's at least explore the change and what spaces could work. And then as we identify different spaces that might be a good fit for us as an office, it started a further conversation about how can we activate this longtime vacant space even better while empowering entrepreneurs and creating a sustainable feeder system to address these vacancies and diversify our business mix and meet a lot of our strategic action plan goals. And we found this amazing space. Worked with very smart people in marketing and PR world and business world, and learned a lot of lessons of how to set up a shared retail space well, how to come up with the name that would feel inclusive. There's a lot of history behind the Middle Village. I will say history or lore. We're not sure which. It kind of blends into
You can
each
just
other.
make it up. Yeah. Legends. We'll go with legends.
Legends.
Middle Earth.
There was a time that downtown Lansing, where it currently sits, was known as Middle Village, and there was Northern Village and Lower Village. So Middle Village grew legs there because it worked for that lore, and it also worked for creating this middle space as businesses were getting off the ground, that they could come, set up with other retailers, receive training every month, learn the hard lessons that we learn right alongside with them, right? Build a sustainable business model, marketing plan, and foster that customer base. So then the idea is they go out into downtown Lansing in these permanent bricks and mortar spaces or throughout the city. And we kicked it off purposely during a holiday season. It's the best sales season, right? Probably the highest percentage rate chance for success. And we saw 5 retailers come into this space during the holidays. And after the spring, many elected to stay on until spring, even though it was going to be just a holiday market. 3 of them have moved into bricks and mortar. 1 purchased a building within our downtown.
Wild.
So now, as we sit in the middle of Middle Village, we have 6 new retailers who are part of the culture of downtown Lansing, who are building that clientele base. We're all like, a family. We lean on each other. We have our good days. We have our bad days. They meet every week with some of our staff to just go over the inventory and the financials, as well as receive that monthly training. And then hopefully we'll also continue to go out and be a part of this community in an even larger way. They're such a vital part of it. And so many people come and like, wow, there's more places to shop, because it's also about changing that narrative or those perceptions. Who is downtown Lansing? What businesses make it up? It's not just lunchtime businesses.
No.
Those businesses are phenomenal. So are our evening dining locations. So are some of these retailers who've been part of Lansing's history for 80 plus years. And now we have all of these other Middle Village merchants who are making downtown and the city their future.
Very, very cool. I always feel a sense of shame because my office is lower level. It's
Don't feel the shame.
It's street level.
It's okay.
And I'm like, oh, we could just use the space even better. But you have a really beautiful utilization of space here because you do get your office, you do get it on the ground floor. But I, as a tourist or a visitor or even a citizen, I can walk in to the place that I can benefit from. I can buy things. I can lift up local, and I have some use of it too. And you're using this space in a really, really positive way. So COVID was such a profound moment in so many of our communities, but especially so here, in that it caused a lot of necessary changes. And one of the changes in a lot of our communities was a greater awareness of this thing called placemaking, in that we don't necessarily have to become victims of our environment. We can change it and we can shape it and we can say, hey, how can we make this a little bit more beautiful, or how can we make this a little bit more useful? One of the things that came about social districts, this idea that we can have people out in streets and we can be drinking beer. Was that something that Lansing did?
Lansing definitely dove right into social districts.
Yeah, tell me about that.
It took about a year to get there, and it gave us a lot of chance to research and talk to other communities who implemented it right at the onset of social districts being allowed in Michigan. And as we talked about social districts here in downtown, it was a great opportunity to work with our neighbors to the north and south in Old Town and Rio Town and say, hey, we all have the capacity to implement social districts. Let's work together on this plan, and then approach council together and talk to our police department together and the city administration with this plan, the boundaries for the district, because we had heard a lot from other communities. Actually, larger was better in terms of enforcement, and then had really in-depth conversations with our businesses too to explain what it meant. It didn't have to be confined to just one block per se, or just one patio space. You now are able and encouraged to sip, shop, linger, and enjoy your community. And it added an additional point of sale opportunity for these businesses. And we saw it not only benefited the restaurants or the bars and distilleries that are part of our community, but as people were lingering, they were checking out the neighboring businesses as well, and it was supporting retail and other industries.
I love the educational component of that, because we speak glowingly of placemaking, of social districts, of these kind of new changes, but like every community, people have different opinions, and they're like, I don't know if I like that, I don't know if I want that. And a lot of times it's just education, of talking to people. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. These are the other communities that have done something different, and this is how they benefited from it. All we got to do is sit down and have a 10, 15-minute conversation about it. They may not agree with us, but at least we've planted a seed. We sometimes assume that everybody wants public art. Or we assume everybody wants to close every street to vehicular traffic, so we get more pedestrian traffic. And that's not necessarily true, but we're coming at it from different perspectives. So I love the educational, talking to businesses and saying, this is what we're doing and why. Yeah, such a critical piece to that success. Any other placemaking things going on here?
Oh, Bob, let's start the list.
Well,
Tell me about this, Bob.
I had a meeting this morning, and this is a project that the Capital City Film Festival is working on. I've been working on it for a while. Got a grant. I'm working with Dominic Cochran to do a 3D projection onto the Co-America building.
Very cool.
It'll be a regular nightly projection. It will change over the years to keep it fresh and exciting. So there will be this exciting show that'll happen. I don't know if you've seen them in Disney, where the building will disappear and turn into something else. That's what we're doing there.
Wow.
We're also, we have sculptures. If you've seen down by Museum Drive. We've got sculptures there. I'm working with Alexandra Leonard, and you'll probably meet her tonight, working on the Shiawassee Street Bridge mural. It's a ceramic tile mural. And the beauty of this is a lot of the tiles are made by people in the community. So as you see the piece of art from afar, it's like, oh, it's a nice piece of art. When you get up close, there's somebody's other art inside of it. So
Very cool.
your grandkids, your kids will come back 20, 30 years, 40, 50 years from now, and they can see the tile that they did.
I love that additional layer to public
Yeah.
art, that it's also community generated
Yeah,
art.
and I'll tell you, this is the part about volunteering and being involved, is that at one point during the placemaking summit that they said, hey, and I do art, and they said, hey, could you paint some parking spaces in front of the Lansing Center? And I was like, sure, I can do that. So I spent a week out there painting parking spaces.
Awesome.
So, I mean, the involvement in meeting different people, I can't stress that enough about volunteering for these in the Main Street, is that you get connections, and you get creative connections, you get business connections. You start knowing people in your community, and it becomes a smaller community. And when you're talking about people and not everybody agrees, and that's okay. But you also know that you're talking to people who you now know on a level, you're at this level of communication that I've talked to CEOs, and I've talked to volunteers, all stripes. And it's like, it's just great. You meet great new people, great friends I found in this.
Well, and as we're talking about placemaking, a couple things. One, in regards to COVID, it accelerated so many projects, but also opened people's minds and eyes to just how much creativity can lead to better community and economic development. How we can change our ordinances or our processes to allow for these things to happen, and they're not that scary, especially if you all are talking together and working together. But then also, placemaking, it's a word that is newer, but it's a vibe and it's a feel and an experience that so many of our communities and downtowns have been practicing for generations. We just didn't have a word to put to it. And I love when people are like, I don't know what it is about this community, but I just love it, or it has this feeling. And we used, whether it was smaller or larger impact placemaking projects to transform like a building that's been vacant for longer than I've been alive, and people just kept complaining about the way it looked. And it's like, well, let's work with our local artists and photographers and put some art and wrap this building with some love and a more positive identity. Or how can we help our businesses and our residents who are looking for safe spaces? Their community in many ways has gone dark, to have a safe space to gather or serve their customers. Let's put a bunch of picnic tables out there with umbrellas in the public space and let anyone use those, anyone in our community. And now we look forward to winter events, because we're in Michigan. Winter happens. It takes up a large part of our year. So rather than hiding from it, let's embrace it and have a celebration of winter in the middle of our downtown. Or let's purposely look at these neglected park spaces that are really iconic and beautiful and historical and say, let's purposely kick off a winter market in it, and then add additional seasonal activations to it that, again, add to property values, add to more people coming in and wanting to open their business here, have a development here, live here, and call Lansing home.
You referenced this earlier, that here in Lansing, we have Old Town Lansing, we have Rio Town, we have Downtown Lansing. And they're distinct, they have different cultures, they have different vibes, they have different characters. And I think that's something that a lot of our communities can relate to in some capacity. It's if it's a smaller community, there's that one strip of downtown and that's it. But in a lot of our communities over the years, it's grown a little bit more, I don't want to say messy, messy is the wrong, but organically, in that you do have downtown, but you also have this commercial district a few blocks away, or you've got another commercial district across the river that feels different, or it looks different. How do you guys interact? Is it healthy? And if it is healthy, give me some examples of what makes that work.
I think our relationships together with all the corridors and neighborhoods and strong leadership with all of those continues to grow in our ability to collaborate and figure out ways that we can work better together. Old Town and Rio Town, and give the example before of social districts and how we work together as a unified force to bring that up and have those conversations, sometimes difficult ones, to get that passed and come to fruition and talk about the lessons learned.
You get what you want a lot faster if you got a bunch of wingmen helping you out. You're like, hey,
Right.
we
Yep.
all want this, as opposed to just downtown wants this. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. We are all stronger when we work together in whatever form or fashion that can take. And then when it comes to events, how can we either bring businesses or artists from our adjacent neighborhoods into be a part of those events and further that lift up local brand, right? Or how can we have a winter festival, for instance, that extends from downtown to Old Town and then hopefully next step to Rio Town right along our riverfront, because that's just a natural flow that exists. There's 4 or 5 other corridors too within our city who have their own governing corridor authorities, and we're all, as the directors, meeting together monthly and talking about lessons learned, challenges we face, opportunities for uplifting an entire city from the inside out. How can we do that?
It's inspirational for
Yeah.
a lot of our communities,
Well,
I think.
and I think if you watch Kathleen, she has to communicate with, explain to council members, whether it's City of Lansing, East Lansing, around the area, legislators, and all that. You learn how to communicate. I watch her communicate with these folks and explain what we're doing, and that, again, when I talk about learning, when this is a free lesson, I get, I sit back and I go, wow, that's cool. So you write that down in your book of the things that you are positive, and that's, it's in this little market here with the staff at DLI, and it's the epitome of Main Street. How, it was pandemic splitting. This was things were leaving, and instead of saying it's time to get off the ship, it was like, come on, we can get more people on this ship now. And if you look around, and this is the when you're in the middle of it, you don't have time to step back and see the changes. But then if you hear people talk, like I said before, they come on, they see this, and they see the new shops that have opened up and the entrepreneurs that are coming out, and it's
The construction happening
the
that they're happy to see.
They're happy to see. I'm on the Historical Society, and we used an empty space at the Knapp's building for a big presentation that we did. That we had a federal grant to do this Pave the Way project for the 496 and the displacement of neighbors, and we are going to put it at the Michigan Museum, which was great. We usually do things there. We couldn't because they were closed. And it was like, well, let's use the Knapp's building, and big windows, and they were so wonderful, the eyes, and they said, go ahead, do it. It's another example of learning to move on your feet and adjust, to something that comes to you. And that's what it's been. I mean, Kathleen and her staff has just been, it's great. It's been inspiring to watch.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Don't tell her, but it was really inspiring.
Okay. See, your
Thanks,
secret's
Bob.
safe with me, Bob.
Blushing. Appreciate it, though.
Yeah.
Seriously, it is. That's how we learn. Even an old dog like me, you see that.
I'm glad you brought up the Pave the Way exhibit. From all of the history and the lessons that had to be learned there, especially as we focused a lot on COVID. But there's been a lot of turmoil across the nation and definitely across states and local municipalities in terms of protests, women's rights, racial diversity, and things of that nature. And that particular project covered some of the sins of our past as a city and really got into some uncomfortable territory and things that were divisive and are somewhat still today of people's memories of how it felt when their neighborhoods were tore down for a highway, of the different community members who lost that sense of place when their favorite corner store or candy shop or church was torn down. And when the Historical Society came to us and we all started brainstorming about how could this exhibit go on, again, having it at the State Museum was a phenomenal space. That just wasn't going to be allowed to happen. It brought about a sense of really accessibility and having this exhibit open at all hours to anyone who wanted to view it by putting it in the windows of a vacant space and lighting it up and having that history there, and then bring it another step and bring all the people who remembered what happened and talking about their personal experiences and then talking about how we cannot do that again.
It's inspirational to me because I think there's such a critical lesson for all of our communities to learn when we're trying to figure out how do we as a community come together through a series of whatever reasons. It just feels like we're not on the same team, or we've got different commercial districts that are kind of lobbing shots at each other. Like how do we break through that? How do we get engaged with all of our community members and not just kind of picking and choosing, oh, it's our business owners or it's our upper class, or like, how do we make sure everybody feels seen and heard? And it sounds like from what both of you are saying is it just really comes down to communication.
Yeah.
Talk, be transparent, educate each other, talk about the fun stuff, the positive stuff, talk about the not so fun stuff, get that out in the open. Let's all talk, let's all work together in good faith and say, how can we make this the absolute best community we can, not just for us, but for the people who come here.
And
Exactly.
And your community is that, it's like this, it's like Bob Johnson, who was the planning director, was talking about someone who was down talking in another community. And he says, wait a minute, we're all in the state of Michigan. If the one thing, and it's the view of, if you look at your house, if you just look at that, you'll not see your community. If you look at your neighborhood, you still won't see your community. You got to back up and see your neighbors, and you got to see your communities next to you. Charlotte, Eaton Rapids, DeWitt, they're your customers. They're the people that are going to come visit you and shop here, finding unique things that you won't find other places. And in this age of online shopping, I think a lot of people still want to come in and see something that's unique and special.
Yeah.
And I think, Middle Village is a great example of that. You're not going to find this stuff just on. You can actually talk to the person who's making this stuff.
Yeah. Very
Fascinating.
cool.
It's just
Yeah, I think sometimes the conflict, a lot of the conflicts in our communities rise up because we think it's personal, when it's really procedural. We just have to send an email, or we have to send a phone call, or we have to make a presentation, or we have to be seen in the businesses, or we just have to know each other and our stories a little bit better. And now we can feel like, okay, we all want successful businesses. We all want more people here. We all want better places to live. We want all these people. We all want the same things. We just have to move forward together.
We have to look at those personal connections and lean in
You've got to
sometimes
make
to where we have to continue to learn and grow and acknowledge that we're never done doing that. And work together.
And I'll say again, I've watched Kathleen go to events that are not related to DLI. They're outside, and that is part of for all of us, including myself. It's not just you're an ambassador to the downtown, but you also are rooting for everybody else in your community. And you're like, hey, I love what you did here. You want to come downtown and do it? Come on. That's, it. Again, as I say to people, we've had people in this circle, in the traffic circle, doing events, and they've got one of 50 views in the United States of a Capitol building and back. That's unique. You get this great opportunity, and we've seen the growth in that. We had the
Afterglow Market?
The blockade.
Oh, yes, blockade.
The first blockade was, and I've never seen something so fantastic, and that was before social districts, wasn't it?
It was the weekend social districts
Yeah.
opened. It
But
was a true celebration of
oh my
community.
gosh. It was, man, that was beautiful.
Well, back to what I've said, I think, numerous times, leading by example. It's not just about downtown. I think if any city, and especially I think this is true of larger cities, it's not either or. That is not the conversation to be had. It is the and. How are we all stronger together? Just because you receive something doesn't mean we're not just as special or worthy of receiving it, but there's all different things that we have to work towards and different needs in each community. So let's stop focusing on this infighting, or again, that either or concept, and figure out how are we building the collective we and the and.
Yeah, our individuals, businesses, and economic entities, government, we don't live in a vacuum, we live in a community.
Exactly.
And so when you become part of a community, you give up this privilege of just kind of being by yourself and doing your own thing. We can all benefit. We don't have to draw weird borders and things like that. You know what? We all want to win this thing.
Yep.
So let's work together. And I do want to talk to you, Kathleen, about working together, because you said a word, or maybe Bob said it, about your staff. And that to me is super intriguing because it's very rare within the Main Street world to have a staff. Tell me about that.
I have a huge smile.
I have to say one thing before this. I got a chance. I had the opportunity to do chalk art in Howell because Kathleen invited me, and I met her staff down there.
Oh, cool.
Again, fantastic staff she had down there.
Awesome.
So the huge smile talking about the staff. It is never one person in a community or at an organization that makes a difference. It's everybody who's bringing their individual skill sets and passion and their whys to what they're doing. And to be able to work in a Main Street organization that has multiple staff members, we can lean on each other. And that's so important, especially on the really tough days. And you're tackling something that's either brand new or has its own unique set of obstacles. They're phenomenal. From the skills that they bring in marketing and communications to our other coworker who leads the community development and business development for downtown, who started herself as a merchant or market vendor similar to those who are here in Middle Village, grew her business and expanded it 3 times, and then went into interior design and community development in the way that she did. That's a unique skill and an ability to, again, cross communicate and cross multiple divides to get people talking to each other and work on the puzzle pieces. That's what we all do here. We are our own puzzle pieces building a collective puzzle together.
How many staff do you have?
We have 3 staff members at DLI.
Give them a shout right now.
Julie, Whitney are phenomenal team. Very lucky to get to work with them, and we truly are a team. It sounds corny, but we are. We all have bad days. We all lift each other up on those days. We all bring that skill set, and I'm so lucky to get to work in this organization with them.
You can't help but smile when you run into them.
Yeah.
There's an energy there.
Hopefully it's a model for other Main Street communities who have seen a lot of benefits from becoming part of the Main Street program to say, okay, we've seen so much benefit from this one person doing this work. How can we give them support? How can we amplify their efforts in such a way to say, well, if one person can do this, imagine if we had 2 or 3, or we had a really dedicated team where everybody can be doing so much at the same time.
And I think
Precisely.
the team here has, you notice it because they get jobs and they have ownership of their tasks they're doing. So it's fun to be a part of that, to watch that happening too. And I've got to say, we've had back to volunteers that we've had before. We've had volunteers that have been here, and they, for different reasons, their businesses, they got too busy. We have a volunteer that comes back and still takes on a big project, but it's not on a committee. But that's that's kind of the thing I stress, is that if you're a Main Street, you can have a committee and a subcommittee, and on those committees you have people who are specialists out there in your community, whether it's the Arts Council or whether it's the Historical Society or just another member who's an architect. And you reach out to those people and you use them as part of your committees. They don't have to be there every session, but they're specialists. And don't be afraid to reach to those. And one of the big things I'm advocate for is on your committees, on your Main Street committees, is to actually break things out into teams on the subcommittees that can bring stuff back and have deliverables.
Bob answered my next question already, and so
I wasn't reading off your stuff,
which is brilliant. No, you just segued so beautifully in that. I think you're echoing something that Owasso just told me in their interview, in that one of the greatest benefits of becoming part of the Main Street program is, one, it creates the structure in this organization, but in a way that allows you to leverage the people who want to do certain things or are capable to do certain things. Whereas maybe previously it was, just join our DDA board, or something very general. Now you can go to a person with a PR background and say, we need you on our promotional committee. And they're like, heck yeah, I definitely want to do that. I have so many ideas about how we can help our downtown. And now you've given people a lane for them to thrive, and a purpose and a mission that really aligns with where they're already headed already. Kathleen, my question to you, after Bob has already answered it, what do you see as kind of the biggest benefit of downtown Lansing being part of Michigan Main Street?
It's how to put it succinctly. I think one of the benefits for downtown Lansing being a Michigan Main Street is it gives us a framework and it gives us a model, but it allows us to not only use that model but make it our own, and to take it further. They're not like a lot of programs that can come along who, here's what you have to do, and they'll maybe give you a plan and then walk away. Main Street gives you the tools, teaches you how to use those tools and expand those into other tools and build from there and build the sustainable long model in a number of ways that fosters community investment and that passion and pride to use for years and years to come.
Love it.
Huge economic impact, and that's how we build.
Oh, I love it. Great things happening here in downtown Lansing. If people are listening at home, one, you should just come here. You should hop in your car, or a bird scooter, or, whatever it is, and come here, experience this place, because whatever you think it is, it's probably better than that, because you might be thinking, oh, it's the capital, and that's it. But it's so much more. It's a community like all of our other communities, but also very unique in its own unique culture, vibe, beautiful people doing beautiful things. But if people want to kind of dip their toe in and stalk you guys on Facebook or on the internet, where can people go? What's your website? What's your Facebook?
For our website, it's downtownlansing.org. Facebook, at Downtown Lansing. Twitter, at Downtown Lansing.
Easy peasy.
Instagram, there's a dot between downtown and Lansing, but it's there.
And I'm going to tell you guys, they're worth a follow. Constantly updating, great content, videos, interviews, photos of things going on. So it's definitely, if you want to see what a Main Street can do on social media and as far as that goes, definitely give Downtown Lansing a follow. So I want to thank Kathleen and Bob for a beautiful conversation today here in downtown Lansing. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.